okay, this one wasn't necessarily a big game for me until we got the college football playoff rankings coming out here just an hour ago, actually. Number 4, Clemson at Notre Dame. Clemson is just a 3.5-point favorite. I want to underscore this right quick, Michael. Georgia's an 8-point favorite and the number 3 ranked team in the country to Tennessee. And yet Clemson is number 4 in the country and a 3.5-point favorite to a team that lost to Marshall. Let's not be coy about this. Do you think that Notre Dame is good enough to beat Clemson? And what would Clemson have to do to Notre Dame for you to be convinced that they're one of the 4 best teams in college football?
Yeah, I mean, how do you predict Notre Dame, right? Like, I mean, this is a team that, at the beginning of the season, they're preseason top 5. They come in, they play Ohio State reasonably tough, relatively speaking, and then they have some shocking losses, as you noted. But in the games that they won, 5 out of the last 6, they won them pretty decidedly. The average margin of victory, more than 14 points. So I don't know, are they turning the corner? It's really hard to say. And on the flip side of things, we just talked about the quarterback situation at Kansas State. How about the quarterback situation at Clemson now? Does DJ Uiagalelei have a shorter leash now that Cade Klubnik had come in and proven that, while he didn't necessarily do anything spectacular, he helped them win that game against Syracuse. So what does Dabo Swinney do? What do they do at that quarterback position? I was looking at some of the numbers, and DJ has a passer rating of 104, and every team in the college football playoff rated above him, with the exception of Georgia, has a quarterback with a better passer rating than DJ Uiagalelei. So that's going to show you the type of level he needs to get to if he wants to try and compete, or he just has to be Stetson Bennett and be surrounded by some of the best talent in college football. And I just don't know if Clemson has those horses this year.
It's also, for me, not a foregone conclusion that he's the starter against Notre Dame. Like, I sincerely believe that Cade Klubnik has to be your guy coming out of the gate for the way that he finished that game against Syracuse. Like, they were on the ropes, and that dude had to leave them back in some game-winning drives to get it done. Also a 5-star quarterback, not unlike DJ Uiagalelei. Now, that said, I don't think there's anything you can do to Notre Dame at this point that is going to impress me enough for Clemson to be one of the 4 best teams in the country. And I'm saying that as the dude that has been looking down his nose at Michigan, but only in as far as we're talking about Georgia, Tennessee, and Ohio State. Not insofar as Clemson or even Texas Christian or one-loss Alabama. I'm having a hard time with this, and that's why I'm very, very grateful to reach this part of the conversation. When you look at the college football playoff rankings, especially 1 through 7, right? Let's get Texas Christian the cutoff here. What really stands out to you? Is it still just Clemson at 4?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's Michigan at 5 and Clemson at 4. Mm-hmm. And the thing about the rankings that I can't really figure out in my own head is, are these the rankings based on who has the best resume right now, or who the committee thinks is actually among the 4 best teams in the country? Because as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, Michigan hasn't really played anybody in their non-conference schedule. It was a pathetic, group of teams that all 3 had first-year head coaches, and that's just a recipe for disaster right there, let alone the quality of the opponent. And so, I think Michigan is absolutely one of the 4 best teams in the country. And, I've been around Ohio State the last 2 weeks, and I covered Michigan before I came to Fox, so I know them really well. And I think they can push this Ohio State team very similarly to last year. Their offensive line is better than last year, and last year's offensive line, pushed Ohio State up and down the field with Hassan Haskins having 5 rushing touchdowns. So I don't think there's any doubt that they're one of the best 4 teams in the country. They just don't have one of the 4 best resumes. So it's like, how do we want to view these rankings? Which way would you rather have the rankings go, RJ? The 4 best teams in the country or the 4 teams with the best resume?
Goodness me. I mean, if we're doing a blind resume, I think that's fair. And as far as the rankings matter in that, who did you play and did you beat somebody when they had a number next to their name? Because I think we look back, for instance, at a number 5 ranked Notre Dame and we say that team wasn't very good. Well, hell, we thought they were good when they played Ohio State, and that has to count for something. Our opinions here, whether they be right or wrong, have to be able to hold water in some way, shape, or form. But for me, it's more, are you penalizing Michigan for playing a soft schedule? Because if you are, I'm fine with it. You got to penalize the SEC. You got to penalize Clemson, and you're not going to do that. That's my issue here. As much as I talk noise, and I do a lot of noise about playing UConn, Colorado State, and Hawaii, good grief. You are the University of Michigan. Go fight somebody. My goodness, beating up on little people. They aren't beating up on UT Martin. They aren't beating up on Mercer. They aren't beating up on Tennessee Chattanooga or Furman, for goodness sakes, Wofford. If you're going to reward Clemson, LSU, Alabama, even Ohio State to a degree, who doesn't do this, by the way, for playing a soft schedule, do the same to everybody. This goes back to my grandma, right? I have a book that came out today. It's called Requiem for the Massacre. I would appreciate it if you all took time to go read it. But I mentioned my grandmommy there first because she told me, hey, it doesn't matter if you are a mean cuss, as long as you're a mean cuss with everybody you meet. And I don't think that the College Football Playoff Ranking Selection Committee is being a mean cuss to everybody they meet. You got a 2-loss LSU team at number 10. I do make it make sense. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm at here. And I feel like you're shafting Michigan for the same thing Clemson has been doing since Dabo Swinney got there. We're going to tell you that our league schedule is difficult, just like the SEC. Our league schedule is difficult. You need to give us a breather. We need an extra couple of bye weeks here. So we schedule our FCS opponents. Michigan looked at that formula and said, wait a second, we play in one of the toughest divisions in all the sports. Why the hell are we not stacking the schedule the way they do down south? And now that you want to change it up because the Yankees are on the team, yeah, we want to play a soft schedule too. That just doesn't feel right to me. So I always feel bad for the spokesman who has to come out in front and take bullets for this committee, because this time it's Boo Corrigan, who's the athletic director at NC State. But I don't think there's anything he could tell me to convince me that everybody in that room thinks that Clemson is one of the 4 best teams in college football, because they frankly ain't. Outside of that, we're probably going to have a national championship play-in game this weekend. And we talked a bit about it with Georgia and Tennessee. Here's my thing. The last time that we had 2 teams this good, LSU, Alabama, right? 2019, do it. We saw a national champ come out of this. What if we don't see a national champion come out of the SEC East, out of Georgia and Tennessee? What do you think that means for the college football playoff rankings going forward? Or even, do both of these teams have to suck in some sort of way for us to believe that maybe it still is Alabama, maybe it still is Clemson, maybe it still is Ohio State? And what can you do if you are one of these teams outside looking into the SEC expecting carnage?
Well, you talked about how does the committee handle certain things and are they being fair or not fair? Well, a fascinating case study of that is going to be how they handle this game versus how they handle the game against Ohio State and Michigan, because that's essentially going to be another play-in game, right before Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving. So I don't know. To me, I'm curious to see how close this game is, who dictates it, and then if Tennessee continues to just put up points on everybody, that to me would be one of the more impressive statements. Even if they were to lose a game 38-35 or something like that, but they can show that they can score on a Georgia team that, yeah, I know how much talent they lost in the NFL draft last year, but this is Georgia. They restock and reload, and they have a system that's good enough where they have guys every single year. So I'm curious how many points they can score on a Georgia team, and then kind of looking at, maybe how many could an Ohio State team score on Georgia? How many could a Michigan team score on Georgia? And then, how does the interpretation of that game come Tuesday with the next CFP rankings, how does that then compare to what they do after the game with Ohio State and Michigan? And is it treated with the same amount of respect or lack of respect come 4 weeks from now?
Last question before we get out of here. The rankings have revealed to me once again an SEC bias, right? With LSU at number 10. And I say it that way to say, what do you think Oregon, USC, or UCLA can do to try to get into the college football playoff?
Man, it's hard. Like, what do? Do you schedule the hardest non-conference you possibly can, and then maybe you make it in, but then maybe you're out of the
like
race
Georgia,
by the end
like they did with Georgia?
89-3 in week 1, and essentially right there, to some extent, you could argue that their season was over that very moment, And so I don't know what you do. All I can think about is you have to. This is going to sound terrible, but you have to run up the score when you can. You have to beat these teams. If you could beat a Pac-12 team and you have a choice of beating them by 17 or 37, you have to just keep scoring and scoring and scoring and scoring, because if you don't play in a league that's going to garner the respect of the selection committee, or at least not be given the benefit of the doubt that the SEC or shockingly even the ACC appears to get from the committee, then you just have to do everything you can. And if that means embarrassing a team, it means embarrassing a team. And I hate that it comes to that, but I can't really think of any other solutions. Can you?
No, not with the present college football playoff process that we have. As a matter of fact, my producer, Catherine Donnelly, has been very wise about saying, hey, RJ, talk about the thing as it is, not as you want it to be. And what we have is Oregon, you're going to have to run it up. You're going to have to make everybody forget about 49-3. I just don't see that as being possible, but hey, do the best you can. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.